Hey guys, how's it going? So, as I was saying in some of my previous videos, I'm going to, give me a moment, bear with me for a second. Let me back up a tiny bit here. I'm actually trying to set up a little recording area in my room. My room's pretty tiny, so I have been, for the most part, just kind of sitting on my bed and making do. I know I've kind of made a little area, so hopefully this will be a little bit better. I'm sorry that I'm lacking decoration, what have you. I'm hoping in my new place, if I have a bigger space, I can actually set up like a recording area and like have it decorated nicely, because I know my backgrounds are lacking and what have you. So today's video is going to be one of many new videos that I'd like to do. Now this is something completely different, and I thought I would do some top 10 type lists, some favorite things, and just a whole bunch of different things to kind of really change it up a little bit. So like I said before, I hope that you guys are going to enjoy these new changes. I really want to kind of broaden things a little bit more, because as much as my animals are the main focus, like the teas especially, I really, as I've said in the past, really want to kind of have something for everybody. And I'm finding more and more with a lot of YouTube channels that it seems that a lot of people are doing the same, where they're just really kind of broadening the spectrum and just making it so there's a little bit of everything. So I hope that you guys will enjoy this, and hopefully there'll be tons of new series to come, and yeah. As long as you guys enjoy them, I'll keep making them. So this video is actually going to be, hopefully, now if I can edit it, which I'm hoping I can because I've taken some screenshots and what have you, I'm hoping that to start editing a little bit, and this is probably going to be my first editing project, so bear with me if it's not perfect or if it's kind of crappy. I apologize. But so what I want to talk to you guys about, and I've actually got a list here, is my top 10 favorite video games. Now, as I've said before, I think like once or twice, I'm not really a huge gamer. I kind of go through phases where I like to play them, and then I kind of get bored and I won't play them for like months, and then I'll go and play them again and blah, blah, blah. But there are quite a few games, well, I've got a list of 10 and then an honorable mention at the end that I've enjoyed since I was a kid or just recently and what have you. And some of them are like my all-time favorite games of my childhood and what have you. So I figured I would just kind of share this list with you. I'm going to try to put some screenshots in of the games because I don't actually have them anymore, or they're not here with me. So I'm going to try to put some screenshots in of the, just so you get an idea of what they look like and what have you, in case you want to maybe search for an emulated version or maybe look for them yourself. So yeah, I hope that you guys will enjoy. So we'll just move right in on the list. So the first game I want to talk to you guys about is my all-time favorite Super Mario game. Now I'm sure almost everybody, especially people around my age, grew up playing Super Mario, and one of my all-time favorite Super Mario games was Super Mario Brothers The Lost Levels. Now if you guys haven't heard of Super Mario Brothers The Lost Levels, it's actually kind of a unique game in the sense that it actually came out for, I'm not sure if it came out for the regular Nintendo first or the Super Nintendo, but I played it on the Super Nintendo. I had the Super Mario All-Stars, which had 4 or 5 Mario games, like the original 2, 3, and then Lost Levels. But anyway, it's basically kind of like the original game, only a lot more difficult. They actually, from what I've heard, it was released in Japan, and they didn't actually release it over here right away because they thought it would be too difficult for us to play. So it took a while for it to come out, and then they ended up naming it The Lost Levels. Quite honestly, it is quite the challenge, but I really, really enjoyed it as a kid. I think it was really fun. It was difficult to fly through. The castles were a little bit more challenging and what have you, and it actually got difficult pretty quick. So it was a lot of fun for me to play as a kid. So if you guys haven't checked it out, I definitely recommend checking out Super Mario Brothers The Lost Levels. It's an amazing game. I absolutely adored it. Next one I want to talk to you guys about, I think it's going to be like an all-around favorite for almost everybody, or at least at some point in their childhood or something they've played it, and that is Pokemon. I grew up on Pokemon. I love the original anime, like the first 2 or 3 seasons I remember watching as a kid, especially the first season I absolutely adored. I haven't played a lot of the newer Pokemon games. I really like the older ones. I'm not familiar with the huge amount of the new Pokemon. I try to watch a little bit of it just to kind of see what it's like. The new games look amazing, absolutely stunning. They're beautiful graphics and what have you, but I'll probably play them eventually, but I don't have a 3DS, and I really don't have the funds to go out and get one just specifically for that game. But I grew up playing the Pokemon games. I really, really loved the originals, and then when they remade Leaf Green and Fire Red, I really, really enjoyed those. Emerald, all of them. I really enjoyed playing. I spent hours and hours and hours. Wasn't really as addicted as a lot of people were, but I really did enjoy playing them. And if you actually go back to my videos, I was playing on an emulated version and I ended up getting Missing No, what have you. So recently I've kind of dabbed in just playing around with it a little bit, and yeah, I always end up finding myself going back to Pokemon and enjoying the old school games. I absolutely loved them as a kid and still enjoy them to this day. So next one I want to talk to you guys about, I actually discovered through an arcade system way back in the day. You can find it for the N64. I actually had it for the N64 before I lost it in the flood, but it's called Cruis'n World. Now, I'm not sure how well known this game is, so I'm going to have to try to find a screenshot to put it in. I actually need to do that before I put this video up if I can. But it basically is a driving game, and it was a very popular racing game, at least around here in the arcades that we used to have. I think it's really, really fun. The arcade version was a little bit more difficult. I found the drivers, like the computer drivers, were really hard to beat, and they cheated quite a bit, and it was very hard to do. But when you actually got it for the Nintendo 64, it was very enjoyable. There's extra tracks to open up, and I spent tons of time playing that game, going through all the tracks and what have you, and just trying to beat my own times and everything. And it was a lot of fun to play. I actually got to the point where most of my friends wouldn't even play with me because I got so good at it that nobody could beat me. So, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with that game. So next one I want to talk to you about is actually probably one of the newest games, I guess, that I've played. And it's actually one of the only out of the franchise that I've actually played through entirety and actually beaten it. And it was so much fun. I was amazed at how much fun I had with it. And that was Resident Evil 5. Now, I'm sure most of you guys have played a Resident Evil game. I'm not really a fan of shooters to play so much myself. I actually played it just kind of on a whim. A friend of mine was a little bit offended that I was watching it on YouTube, and he's just like, you need to play it. Like, it's offensive that you're watching it and not playing it. And I was just kind of like, I don't know. And so he ended up letting me borrow it. And y'all, I got so hooked on that game for months and months and months. Me and my sister-in-law would just play it for hours. It was so much fun to play through. I know a lot of people kind of aren't a fan of the newer ones because they're really not as horror-based as the older ones used to be, and that I can kind of agree with. But, you know, I found it to be a lot of fun to play through. It wasn't too difficult. It wasn't too easy. It was so much fun to play. Me and my sister-in-law had so much fun going through it. And for being my first Resident Evil game that I ever played, I really did enjoy it. Actually, to the point that I actually bought it myself. Now, it's at my dad's right now, where I would just show you the case because I don't have a PlayStation 3 right now, so I don't really have a point of having it here. But, I really recommend it, especially if you're new to the Resident Evil genre. I think that it's a great one to start with, in my opinion, only because it's fairly easy to get the hang of it. It's easy to control, and I just think it's all out a lot of fun. I think it's more so fun to play with a friend than just doing it on its own, but that's just my opinion. That's just kind of how I prefer to play it, but I'm sure most of you gamers out there would absolutely enjoy it. If you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend it. Again, I should put this out there. This is just my opinion of my favorite games. You know, of course, everybody's list is going to differ. Your opinions may differ on the games that I've chosen as my top 10. And, you know, to each their own. Everybody's different. So the next two games are two in the same franchise. And they're two of my all-time favorite games as a kid. And the first one is Zelda: A Link to the Past. Now, if you guys haven't heard of the Zelda franchise, you must be from Mars, because basically everybody's at least heard of Zelda. I haven't really played any of the newer games, but back when I was a kid, I really loved Zelda: A Link to the Past. It was for the Super Nintendo. I think that game was so much fun to play through. It was really, really cool how there was a lot of things that you could do, not just quest-wise, but you could really kind of fool around with stuff. And I like that it was kind of basically an open world in a sense, and I had a lot of fun just doing random things and exploring the big world that you had, and I thought that that was really, really cool. The next one, again, is another Zelda game, and it is Zelda: The Ocarina of Time. Now, this has to be my all-time favorite Zelda game. I absolutely love The Ocarina of Time. If you guys haven't heard of it, it's for the Nintendo 64. Again, a big open world that you really get to play in. There's so many things that you can do, like extra things, a lot of different exploring and different things that you can find and what have you. It's really a fun game. Another thing I like about a lot of these games is you're not going to be able to beat them in a day. They are going to take you a while, and I think that's something that a lot of games are really lacking nowadays. I hear people paying like $60 to $80 for a game and beating it in 4 hours. I think that's a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. Whether or not they have a lot of online time or not, I really am not interested in that. I like the old school games where you had the full game to beat, it took you a while, you had a lot of fun doing it, etc., etc. Again, that's just my opinion. So I really like those open worlds and how there was a lot of extra stuff that you could do instead of just following the quest. Now, the next one, have loved ever since I was a child. Like, as far back as I can remember, and when it came out, I was just, like, hooked on it, and even the movies, too, which I know a lot of people aren't a fan of. And that is Mortal Kombat. I absolutely love the original Mortal Kombat games. 1, 2, and 3 were my all-time favorites, 2 being my big-time favorite. Absolutely loved those games as a kid. I remember playing them for hours on end, just going through it myself, playing with friends. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed the movies. I know a lot of people aren't really a fan of them for whatever reason. I grew up on them. I really enjoy the movies. I still watch them every now and again to this day. I think they were a lot of fun. The games were challenging. They were fun. The only thing I didn't really like about the games back then was the codes were a little bit tricky to do. But again, that's just me. It's just something that I have a bit of a hard time with. But even still it was still very enjoyable. A lot of fun to play through, and I really, really enjoyed it. Sticking with the fighting games, one more fighter is Killer Instinct. Now, surprisingly enough, a lot of people I talk to have never heard of Killer Instinct, which I think is crazy because it was one of the games of my childhood. It was for the Super Nintendo, and they made one for the N64, and now they've made one for the Xbox One. But I loved Killer Instinct. I had so much fun playing that game, my favorite character being Cinder. It's a lot like Mortal Kombat in a sense, only it does lack a little bit more of a storyline than Mortal Kombat, I find. You really kind of have to do some research to find the storyline. There is a bit of one there, but it's definitely not as well told as some of the other fighter games or some other games. They really kind of leave it almost open to interpretation. You kind of get some bios of the characters and what have you, but there's not really an actual full-on storyline to it. But that being said, it's still really, really enjoyable. I can honestly say it was probably a little bit more challenging than Mortal Kombat for me. There were a lot of times where I really did struggle with some of the characters and what have you. I remember, especially on the Super Nintendo version, a lot of the computer players were very spammy with certain moves, and if you got caught in a corner or whatever, sometimes you couldn't get away from them, and they would just basically, like, kill you in like seconds almost, and that was a little bit frustrating at times, but again, it made the game challenging, which is always, you know, like a positive. And I'd also like to put out with the Mortal Kombat games and the Killer Instinct, they do, I believe, if I can remember, they do have a way to set the difficulty even back then, so if, you know, you're not just going to get your butt handed to you every time, you can set it to be a little bit easier or more difficult depending on. And with Killer Instinct 2, at least in the Super Nintendo version, they actually have a training course where you can basically kind of mess around with the controls and what have you, and you just go against Fulgore, which is like their robot, and he doesn't move or anything, he just kind of stands there, but you can kind of get used to the controls and try to figure out some of the moves and the combos and what have you. So it's a way to just kind of get you used to the game, which I think is a neat feature to have, especially for older games, because a lot of older games, at least a lot of the games that I remember, didn't really have that kind of setup, like a tutorial or anything like that. So it was kind of nice to see it, just to kind of throw it in there for the new people to get used to the stuff instead of just being thrown in and dying 600 times before figuring everything out. So I thought that was kind of unique and cool. So we've only got a couple more left. The next one I want to talk to you guys about is the Mario Party franchise. Now, the one in specifics that I really, really enjoyed, there's quite a few of them now, are the ones for the N64. 2 and 3 being my favorites. These games are so much fun to get a group of friends together and just play them. I absolutely adore them. I think that you can have so many good times just laughing and what have you. Me and a now ex-friend used to sit there for hours. We lived in a small town of literally like 2 streets. There's nothing to it. So we normally had a lot of time to kill on days off and what have you. And we would just sit there for hours playing that game. We made even had a drinking game for it. And it was just so much fun to play. You really get into it when you're with a group of friends and you can get really competitive and what have you. And it's a lot of fun. I will say one downer is there are a few games that if you're playing with a few computer players that the computer players always win, which is kind of a letdown when you know that that's going to happen. It does kind of lead because you can't really pick the games when you play them, like the mini games. It does kind of make a little bit of a crappy experience when you get those games that you know for a fact that you're not going to win. That kind of sucks when there's just no way. But again, too, there's maybe 2 out of 75 games that are like that. So you really do kind of have a huge kind of thing of different stuff to play with. So I really enjoy those games. They are really expensive because they're really popular, which is something that I'm not really a fan of. I see the newer ones, even actually ones for the Wii, still at $70 and what have you. So it's a pretty pricey game, but I definitely can say that I would think it's worth the money with how much stuff you can do, how many worlds there are to play with. As long as you got a group of friends to play with and what have you, you will really enjoy it. So the last one on the list, before the honorable mention, as I'm going to call it, is Animal Crossing. Now, I got introduced to Animal Crossing on the GameCube version, and I actually seen it with a couple of friends. Now, this will probably explain some of my stupid humor. I find humor and the silliest of things. The one thing that really drew me to this game was the fact that you could like hit people over the head with nets and stuff, and they actually make a reaction. They'll get upset at you and what have you. And I thought that was like the funniest thing ever, being able to like interact with the characters like that, and you can like annoy them and what have you. And so when I seen that, I was kind of like, ooh, this is kind of interesting. And I ended up buying it on my own and absolutely adored it. It's really, really fun. I will be honest with you that you actually even do get attached to some of the characters. When they move on, you kind of get sad, like, no, don't leave. And you can like write letters to them and what have you. And it's really, really neat. The GameCube version was very limited. You really didn't have a huge area to kind of explore besides the town that you had, whereas the new ones have kind of, you know, made it so there's like another town that you can go to and this and that and what have you. But in the GameCube version, it wasn't like that. It was kind of the basics, but it still was very, very enjoyable. You could bug hunt, you could fish. There's so many different things that you could do in the game that it really still, in my opinion, is very enjoyable. If you can find it or get your hands on it, I definitely recommend it. Any of the Animal Crossing games that I have found, I've really enjoyed playing, but that one especially is my favorite. So the honorable mention that I want to mention before I end this video is Harvest Moon. Now there's quite a few Harvest Moon games. The one I played, I can't think of the name at the top of my head. I'll have to Google it and I'll try to put a screenshot in of it as well. It's for the GameCube. If you guys haven't heard of the Harvest Moon games, they're a little bit different than most games. They're kind of like real life entertainment in a sense, where basically the whole objective of the game is to basically raise farm animals, find a husband, have a kid. Just, it's really what you would kind of, I guess your goals would be sort of in real life in that sense. And you get to grow your own crops, take care of cows. You can breed cows and just different animals and interact with the town, sell things, help people out, just different things like that. They've made quite a few of them now. My favorite was the GameCube one. I haven't really been a fan of the ones for the Wii. I've tried one of them. I really didn't like how it was. But I definitely think that they're worth checking out, especially if you're looking for something more laid back, something that you can just kind of casually play, you know, like it's a relaxing, very easygoing type game. And for somebody who likes something more leisurely, I think that it would be great to play through. It's a lot of fun. You do get to kind of choose your husband. There's a couple different suitors, if you will, that that you can kind of play around with. And yeah, I think it's an amazing game. Again, I know most of these games are fairly old. I don't have any of the newer systems. There are a few newer games that I'm kind of interested in that I can quickly mention here. Grand Theft Auto 5 I think is awesome. I've actually got to play a little bit of it at my brother's. I'm actually hoping to have it soon. I think Grand Theft Auto 5 is a lot of fun to play. Obviously it's not for children. Most of these games I listed besides Resident Evil I think would be pretty okay for children for the most part. But of course, the Grand Theft Auto, you really don't want kids playing that, or at least you should explain to them really what they're going to be playing, because everybody knows that Grand Theft Auto games really are not for children. They are for a mature audience. That is definitely the case. But of course, you know, everybody deals with their kids differently. I remember back when I was younger, when San Andreas came out, I was playing it with my brother and what have you. It's all about how you teach your kids, you know, teach them from right and wrong and what have you. But yeah, that's my list of games. Now, I'm not a huge gamer, but these are just some of the games that I really, really enjoyed playing or enjoyed at one point. Some of them I still go back to every now and again, like I said, like with Pokemon and what have you. But I'm going to end this here. This is a longer video. I'm sorry. We shall talk to you guys later. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and we shall see you soon. Bye.